Hello, Richa ji.
Namaste ji, Sat Sri Akal.
How are you?
I am doing fantastic. Thank you for having me here.
Thank you for finding time. A friend referred to me. I was talking to someone, and then she said that you should talk to this person. She is a new migrant just like you. I think the same dates. You came in 2013.
Yes,
I came in
2013.
14, so
Oh, there you
even
go.
later
Yeah.
than you.
Yeah.
And she said that this person has done a lot. And she is the founder of Dual Nation, so
Yes.
a flourishing business.
Yes, very
Um,
flourishing. Yes.
and then a life coach to unmuting you, and she's a mentor. And
Yes.
this, my friend, is a mentor. And then a podcast host.
Yes.
So, and she actually chided me saying, you're doing only one podcast and one business. But you think of it, she's got four. So maybe there is something that you can learn from her as well.
Are yaar. That's a blessing in disguise.
So here we are, and let me see, and let's discuss how you achieved all those four things, and and then you are a CEO of Shivasta Joshi family.
Yes, I am. That is the most important role that I have. So, how did this all happen? So, when we moved here, we were expecting our second child. So, being away from home meant there was no family support, and coming to a new country and a new city meant ki koi dost nahi the. There was no one to kind of watch the other child and stuff. So, I chose to take a break. So, the story is a before and after kids story for me when it comes to all these things. When I was in India, I was doing a lot of corporate training because around that time, India में बड़ी outsourcing होती थी, right? And I had trained as a corporate coach, and I wanted to do those things. So the journey for me started when I found that a lot of these people and a lot of these corporates and organizations would say ki talk like an American, talk like an English person, like a British person, dress like them, Australian ki tarah baat karo, just so you could be understood on the other side of a telephone call or a service call. My problem with that was ki why? Doesn't make any sense to me. India is generally a temperate country where we are quite warm, right? Ab usme suit boot pehen ke jana just doesn't make any sense to me when we are a cotton rich country, kind of a thing. And you're also at the same time negating our entire identity as Indians. आ तो रहे हो आप हमारे पास काम के लिए. So that was my problem. So I stopped working for the corporate that I was working for, and I started my own gig as a corporate coach, offering lots of soft skills, bridging that gap because income is good. I personally believe income is good, and there was quite a lot of disposable income available at that time. So बच्चे आ रहे थे दूसरे states से to come and work, in Bombay, in Hyderabad, in Bangalore, and Calcutta, and all those places. So I chose to do that. So after the children's story bit is I stopped working when I came to Australia because of the reasons I mentioned before. But वो एक I don't know भूख है या उसको फायर बोले या जलन बोले या itch बोले जो भी बोले, I wanted to go back into coaching again. So I recertified as a life coach and did that. But in the meantime, while I was studying, my 2-year-old got ostracized by other children who were also 2-year-olds. Both sets, my son does not remember anything. Those children obviously don't remember anything. And something happened, and I bought a piece of a t-shirt from Kmart, honestly. I bought one of their printing things. Printer ghar pe tha. I printed a t-shirt for him to showcase to him that you have to be proud of who and what your identity is. All right. And by that, I'd put 2 flags on it, the Indian flag and the Australian flag, to say you're both and you are just as important, you're just as unique, you have a place here. Now, a 2-year-old has no understanding of it, but that was my intention as the adult. So, went to daycare, wore it. The daycare educators were like, where did you get this shirt? Where did you buy it? Tell us that. I said, no, I made it. And over a period of 3-4 months, people started asking me to make them their, heritage T-shirts. So I said, why not make this into a business? Because it is obviously needed. The other side of that conversation for Dual Nation was that I was president of the Multicultural Association in Gladstone, and I'd see the same thing, the same conversation about just because we've come to Australia doesn't mean that we forget or integrate or assimilate completely into it by having to forget all of that. So that's how Dual Nation was born. 5 years later, earlier this year, I got an award for as a local business hero by Australia Post. And it finally felt like, yes, even though the business has been flourishing, it's like, yes, a national recognition. So that is one of my biggest wins for this year. Life coaching is happening. It's one-on-one. It's all of those things. And I work particularly with migrant women of color because I feel that we have a lot of things, women generally anyways, but, we have a lot of things that we can work with to give them the same aspirations that we have being in a different country. So I work with those. And then there's a podcast. The same but different podcast was born out of a need, in all honesty, Nirmal, to hear my own voice. But it was an extension to talk more about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And that is my first and foremost, heading kind of a thing under which I operate all these three businesses. So that's who I am. But bache hai, I have two beautiful kids and a wonderful husband. And I get to do life with them here in Australia.
Good. So how has Dual Nation been accepted, or how has it flourished, or has it increased?
Dual Nation, the concept behind Dual Nation is obviously a very emotive one because it is not like salt or bread, milk and eggs that you buy every day, right? Mm-hmm. So there's occasions when you do wear them or you gift them. Initially, it was more about pride, about our identity and our maybe mixed heritages as well. And over a period of time, I've seen it go 5 years in the business. I've seen, where the trends are. A lot of it happens around citizenship ceremonies. It happens in March because we have the dreaded Harmony Day stuff, so that happens. And then there's also a lot of it, that happens through the year. So it's dibs and drabs. Has it been accepted? It hasn't. I wish it was accepted more because the conversation about multiculturalism in Australia, with my experience, has been a paper-only experience. There's a lot of covert stuff that is happening, which a lot of migrants face on the daily, and they don't have to be just from India to face it. Our Indonesian, families, Malaysian families, the African, South African families, everywhere. The Asian communities, the Chinese, the Malaysian, the Singapore, everything. It's just happening, and my main surmise is, why do we get so scared about someone who's different? And this, for me, and the hope for me for acceptance is that people will say, yes, I am. So that's what makes me different. That's what makes me valuable. That's what brings spice to the entire tapestry of what Australian multiculturalism is all about. So has it flourished? I wish I was a millionaire by now because Australia is mostly migrant, We will get there, though. We will get there.
So how many dollars left to become a millionaire?
$1 million.
Right. You talked about your challenges that you've seen in the last 5 years as a business trying to run this and make it big. What challenges and how you have surpassed them?
So some of the challenges have been this whole idea, which was it's somehow ingrained in our culture here in Australia, where a lot of people believe that multiculturalism and celebration of multiculturalism is divisive, which means we're not all one, we're not all, Australian. The difference between nationality and what's on your passport, your ethnicity is very different from what's, when you are granted a citizenship. Multiculturalism, in my eyes, of course I'm very biased, is also the spice of everything. It just adds so much more flavor. So what have I faced? I've faced comments about that. You're dividing people, you're putting people, we're all Australian, we're just one and only. And I understand why they want to keep it together. But that doesn't talk about all the different other conversations that happen when we say that you're only one and not anything else. There's so many intersectionalities that happen, and the conversations that layer that, those intersectionalities they get negated and put under the carpet. Everyone is the same. But we're not. We have different needs. We have different languages. We have different food and everything else. One of my keynote speeches as a dual nation owner was more than butter chicken and naan. To tell our own people that we are more than just the food. We are more than just the tokenistic dancing that we do, and everything else. So I've faced all of those conversations. They've slid into my DMs and given me their peace of mind. How have I surpassed them? Sometimes initially when I was younger in the business, I would retaliate because I would get angry. Now I read it, I take a breath, and I reply in a way that still shows the people who are part of Dual Nation and the journey that we're still safe. It's okay. It's okay. Some people will have different views, and that is, while not okay, it's still okay that they can at least voice it so we know what's going on. Covert is not good. Overt can be dealt with. I feel that way, so that's what I've done. Has it been hard? I've had several nights of crying where I've been like, oh, they're talking about me and they're making me feel bad and I'm a bad person, blah, blah, blah. I've done all of that. But you grow. In a business, you grow and you learn to take the sticks and stones that are thrown and learn how to separate that from your own personal self and self-worth.
All right. So from that, I've got two questions. What does multiculturalism actually means to you? What we should be aspiring towards in the field of multiculturalism or in that concept of multiculturalism?
So for me, multiculturalism means the acceptance and the celebration of all the cultures that form part of your community. Country comes later. Communities are what make everything happen. So when we are, say, walking down the street and our neighbor is, say, for example, celebrating one of their traditional, festivals. I'm Indian, so I'll speak to that. We'll celebrate Diwali. The houses are lit up and everything else. When our non-Indian counterparts walk by my house, if they look at it with disgust, then there's a problem. But if they look at it with curiosity and they say, oh, this is new, I've never heard of this. If you're good enough neighbors, hopefully you'll get invited for, Diwali dinners and parties and stuff like that for us to learn. So for me, multiculturalism means being open to understanding someone else's culture and knowing that it can be different, because it's not just, I don't know how controversial this will be, but just the white people's culture, that's the culture. Right? There's so many things outside of a white person or colonizers, culture that is acceptable and should be accepted. That's how I look at it. How can we do that? Speak to your neighbors. You don't have to go speak to an MP or your local councillor and say, you have all of us living in your communities as well. Go ask them. Ask them with curiosity and respect. Hey, I've seen you wear a red dot in your forehead. What does that mean? Oh, I love that sari that you're wearing. I've heard it's 6 yards. How do you manage? But with curiosity. Not like, what are you wearing in the middle of your head? Why are you wearing a towel on your head? Stuff like that. With that openness and the curiosity, we can work it. Instead of just relying on fake news on Google. That's how I look at it.
Right. And the second question that you said, that you understand why they want to have a unifying tendency, the same thing across everyone. Why is that?
I think it is, I don't know if it is political or if it is a deep-seated need to say, divided we fall, together we can conquer kind of a thing, where there's strength in unity. So we always tend to label, right? And when we say that we're one, we are many, that many bit gets lost, we are one, is great for a country. You have to have pride in the country you're living in or you call home. It's really a good, awesome feeling. So maybe it's that. It could also be that when we say we're Indian Australian, we're Malaysian Australian, Italian, blah, 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 it divides us into many different types of people rather than one. And that could be a reason why they feel that, oh no, you're just Australian. Australian citizen, so that kind of a thing. So there's a different nuance there which negates that identity. So maybe that's what it is. The other angle is obviously racism. Simple as that.
We'll go down that path. We'll go down that path. So now with those answers, I'm faced with the question of, on one hand, if I celebrate or go down that path of multiculturalism, it will create multiple identities in Australia. And on the other hand, I also need to have a unifying identity. How do I solve that question?
That's a good question. That's a question that's going to go down a really great tangent, isn't it? We can have it all. That's how I look at it. We can actually have it all and celebrate it all and champion it all and still be unified. As passport holders, we have that one unifying thing which says we're Australian citizens, so that's one thing. But under citizenship, there's so much. I mean, it's such a thing where unity can be achieved in many different ways. And I go back to saying again that, we can have it all and champion each and every one of us, especially us who are coming as migrants, because each and every one of us adds a special something to the tapestry that we call our local community, local government, local business, whatever you want to call it. Everyone avails of those services and those products as well. So why can't we be one that way? Now, if you ask me in the context of cricket, that's where my confusion comes. Are we one? Are we many? Who do I support? India or Australia? Right? So I just end up supporting, analogically, the one who's playing the best.
Well, I support whoever is winning.
Yeah.
That makes it much more easier.
But yeah, so keeping that analogy in mind, we can, as a country, be unified as a concept of being peoples of many nations. And that's fine, because that's what makes Australia multicultural.
That never works.
It never does. It's so that's where that whole thing of division
I can give
comes
you
in.
2 examples of how it never works.
Right.
That we are a multinational people under one place. For example, in India, Tamils have been fighting to separate and have their own country. Many other states have been fighting. In Europe, Britain just got out of EU. So
Yes.
EU was the same tendency that to combine these multiple nationals or nationalities or nations under one set of rules and regulations. And Britain got out of it, saying, no, it's gone too far.
Yeah.
Right or wrong, it's up to them to decide. They are a sovereign nation. But how I see it is that every tendency to bring about, if you have multiple separate nations, they can't live under one supranational identity.
Okay, yes.
And if you have a supranational identity, these individual nationalities have to give away. You can't have a nation within a nation,
Okay.
a law within a law.
Yep.
Those things can't work, because otherwise you can't have 2 aims when you are aiming at something.
Right.
When you are shooting an arrow, you can't have 2 aims.
Right.
You won't reach anywhere.
I get completely what you're saying with regards to that, and I think that's where the constitution of any country comes in handy, where, well, those rules and laws are broken many times in different contexts, but when we have the constitution and it says be this, do this, this is what's expected, etc., etc., and most of those constitutional writings and phrases are about being a good human, isn't it? Be fair to the other. Or when we say, follow the rules and laws and everything else. You've posed a really dilemma to me now. I'm like, how does this work when it comes to dual nation? I will go back to say then that having these intersectionalities that we have within a nation of migrants who have more than one heritage, or maybe even more, however they want to celebrate, that is essence of what the country is. And therefore, maybe that's the unity. The essence of the country is that. I feel that on a law and rule, larger picture, if we do follow all the things that we need to follow to be unified as a country, when we're following rules, don't go stealing, don't do this, don't do that, stuff like that, then that gets us unified in one concept. But I still feel that when we negate the identity, the heritage of the person who's decided to migrate to Australia and call Australia home, then we're negating a huge part of not just their identity, but also their input as being of a different country, of the diversity of thought. Not just diversity in the big terms. I remember what you told me about that. But, just the diversity of thought and input. So, yes, I'm going to have to go back and think about this one, Nirmal, really well.
On the topic of when you're saying that how we can inculcate these values into the society, how do you mentor someone to do that? You are a mentor.
Oh my goodness, you've got me in the hot seat now. The mentoring that I've done has been around a lot of business coaching, and it has been for startups. And what I've seen where it happens in that space is that the mindset is the one that we're looking at most. So when we're looking at mindset, what I found in the last 2 years of being part of the Boosting Female Founders was that it doesn't matter. It didn't matter. It doesn't matter. I won't say that. It didn't matter which country they were, born from or whatever, but the mindset and the value systems were the same. Where we wanted independence, maybe it be financial, maybe it be thought and everything else. The values were aligned where they wanted to be, compassionate, honest, trustworthy, hardworking, etc. So those values at the base level were the same. So when I do the mentoring, whether it is for BFF or if it is for my other organizations and stuff like that, I always say be open. Be open to the concept of different. Now, I am obviously biased because that's my entire brand, right? That be different and celebrate different. Because the idea behind not celebrating different also puts people in a different, in a box that we feel that we are restricted in. So to mentor people, I always say, open up, talk to people, understand where they're coming from, and also be open to change for yourself, right? Because when you know better, you do better. At least that's what I'm hoping to, mentor people on those values. So, yeah, so that's where I look at, that's the angle I take when it comes to mentoring my people.
Under your mentoring brand, you are a life coach for migrant women of color.
Yes, sir, I am.
What does woman of color means? And what does woman means? What does woman of color means? And why do you choose women of color?
You know what? You've got the best questions. All right. So in my eyes and in my opinion, as we were talking before as well, there's nothing binary anymore, kind of a thing. And it can't be this black or white or, anything else. So for me, a woman is someone who can have children. Simple as that. Has the biological infrastructure built in where she can have children. Does that mean that other women are not women? They are women. Everybody has their own definition of what woman means. So when it comes to women of color, I'm talking about women who are not from white background, meaning Caucasian, meaning the European and everything else. So when we talk about women of color, I'm also talking about people from Asia, Southeast Asia. I'm talking about people from Africa, South Africa as well, the Latina nations and everything else. Those are the women I'm talking about. And that, for me, is the definition for women of color.
How about women from Iran or Afghanistan? Because they'll be white.
Yes, they will be white, but they, again, with the definition going back to, it not being from white only. And it's not just the skin color, right? Mm-hmm. It's more about which country kind of thing you're coming in from. Now, for example, there are loads of Indians who live in, say, Britain, right? Are they people of color? Yes, they are people of color. because not just because of their skin color, because of their ethnicities. So women of color also, kind of branches into the ethnicity of the person as well. So that's where it also lies.
And why choose women of color?
That's how old am I? I'm 45. So that's a story that started when I was 6 years old, and I went first to America, and we were in high school. People who look different, just on the surface of it, are ostracized anywhere and everywhere. And it's just not the skin color. It could be they're on the spectrum. It could be they have Down syndrome, etc., etc. We're ostracized, right? So that journey for me started when I was 6, and you're going to love this. I'm sure you've heard this somewhere. I was asked by another 6-year-old who is predominantly white if our people, meaning us Indians, we still lived on trees and we rode on elephants. I said, yeah, we have circuses in our back, in our huge lawns, because we live in palaces. I didn't know what I was saying, but I was just reacting. So that is what has started for me. And what I feel also is that even though I've lived in different countries that are not India, my birth country, I was finding that happening to a lot of women of color again and again. And being a closet feminist, I feel that there's more that needs to happen for a lot of women, because even though, again, with all that travel and all that education and the privilege of having an education, that too in the English language, I faced the same thing in the last 10 years. That whole coming out of the label of mama, and then, business owner, and so many intersectionalities again. And they keep coming. My mom, if I tell her real age, she'll get really mad when she listens to this, but she's of a certain vintage. She faced that when she was living abroad and outside of India. I faced it. My children face it. So if it's 3 generations who are facing the same kind of issues, then something needs to be done. So therefore, women of color and coaching for women of color.
And what do you do with the women of color so that they don't have to face these things?
We work a lot of it. People might generalize it by saying that that I'm coaching mindset, and yes, it has to do with mindset as well. But the way I do coaching is we look at the historical context, in the sense that we will look at where they're coming from, what their cultural norms are, and we work through the different limiting beliefs that they may have because of that cultural implication. And to those listening, this does not mean your culture is bad. There are certain things in every culture that does not work anymore, especially in the context of migrants, right? You come to a different country, different sort of a lifestyle, different aspirations. Then I work through all of that and then provide them with the tools that are there, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what is on the outside. We all bleed red. We all bleed red when we want to, achieve something. We have a goal. We want to achieve it, but then there's limiting blocks. And I've seen that across all the clients I've had in the last 3 years. And it was not necessarily women or women of color. It's been men of color and white women as well who face the same limiting blocks, from different perspectives. So, yeah, that's how I work through it. And then we co-create systems so that they don't need me anymore. I mean, I would love for them to come back and make some money off of it, but the systems that we co-create are systems that work for them within that cultural context. I never say, get rid of your culture. No, don't. That's what makes you unique, and that's what makes you who you are. The things that don't work, we work through that, manage it, and we co-create systems so that they can do all of these goal setting, mindset, this thing, values, blah, blah, all the things that all coaches do, so that they don't need me anymore. That's my aim. Don't need me anymore. Come work with me. We'll work together and we create systems, and then you don't need me anymore because you can do it on your own.
So one question from my business mind is, why do we need to even involve culture in a business setting or a work setting? Because you come to workplace to do a work, and I pay you to do the work and I get profit out of it. Why bring culture into the whole conversation?
Bringing culture into the whole conversation comes in from, say, for example, let me give you an example. One of my clients, it was earlier this year around Ramadan, they needed to go home at a certain point of time so that they could break iftar, right? They work for one of the big four companies, and that wasn't something that they could do because they were being paid for the time that they gave up in order to, pay their bills. And that was causing a problem for this client of mine because that's what they follow, right? And on an everyday basis, the fact that they are of that faith and are wearing a hijab, or maybe even carry the prayer mat with them and do it on their own time, during lunch breaks or whatever they need to do. There was a lot of snide comments coming from the non-Muslim counterparts who were sharing the cubicle in the same office space. And that can erode a confidence of a person. Now, the person who's going to work and the person who's coming home for breaking iftar is the same person. And they have that culture from day zero, right? So kind of a thing. So when I bring in the cultural context, I'm respecting and honoring their culture and whatever traditional practices that they have, that they follow within their family setup, within their faith setup, within whatever cultural norm that they follow. And working with them to say it is okay. You live in a beautiful country. You live in a country where a lot of people may not know about the faith, and they have maybe got, especially in this context, a lot of wrong views about your faith. Education is good. You can talk to them about it. So when that happens and the confidence of this person because of their faith erodes, it starts showing up in work as well, right? And when that happens, ultimately for a corporate, you have an uninterested employee who's just clocking in and clocking out, but there's no growth. They can leave your company if someone else offers something. So there's no brand loyalty, right? So that's why that conversation around culture is also very important when it comes into workplace settings as well, and business settings as well. So yeah.
Interesting conversation, because my business is a beauty salon, runs from 9 to 5. And because the workers and my employees are usually women, and they are all women, and they do come up with this requirement that I have to leave at 2 or 2:30, so I have to pick up my kids at 3 when they finish school. So I can work only from 9 to 2. Mm-hmm. Now that creates a problem for me, because either I close my shop at 2 instead of 5, or which can go up to 6 or 7 depending on the clientele, or I hire another person who has to come now only from 2 to 5. That's a big business issue
from the business side, in a sense of things. Yes,
and then it's a issue for that woman, both of the women, that one cannot work more than 2 to 5. So she is in a permanent part-time casual role, and the first woman, because she can work only from 9 to 2. So and that's why when we have these conversations, even before someone joins the business, and when we are in the recruitment phase, I do let them know of my issues, that this is the business reality, and they appreciate, and we don't go that recruitment path itself. So do you think from that perspective, is it better that if I have to leave my workplace for religious or children or any other work, or like maybe I might be running a business somewhere and I need to leave early so I can start there, is it better to let the business know during the recruitment phase itself, or also try, or even if you are in the employment, to work out some ways that the business also doesn't get hampered, because there's business has to make money.
Let's be honest about this. The business has to work as well, because if the business grows, if the business makes money, then you're paying salaries, whether they're part-time, casual, or full-time, right? And then obviously you put money back into the business to grow your business, right? So that part is 100% understandable and works. Do I think they should be honest when they're coming into your business, just wanting a job and not saying that they might have to leave at 2? I think that's wrong. I think in both situations, like you've said, you're very honest about the fact that I need you for 9 to 5. So if you're having to leave, then it might not work out. It might not be the best relationship to, grow with us. That same has to be afforded by people who are looking for jobs, be it in your business, be it somewhere else. A lot more women, especially mothers, are coming into the workforce here. And childcare being childcare, and how expensive and inaccessible it is for a lot of people because of the expense, it does limit women. So I'm really grateful that you employ only women. Yay! Because my inner closet, feminist is going yay there. But I completely understand your dilemma. What can you do is obviously something I'm sure you know what to do about that. But yeah, it has to be honesty from both sides, because honesty and trust in the beginning creates a longer and a lasting relationship.
Right. So you multiple time refers to being a closet feminist. Now, feminist has a different connotations over the years, first wave, second wave, and I'll let you go on to that path, because I shouldn't be speaking on those things.
Oh, you can. Yeah.
Like you are the guest, so I need to know your perspective. I've got my perspectives,
Right.
but it's your time. So tell me about what's feminism. What does being a feminist means? What is a closet feminist? And then the multiple waves of feminism.
All right, I won't speak to the multiple waves of feminism because I wasn't there. I have definitely benefited from it, from all the work that the previous, feminists did in order to me even being in front of you. Because you're a married gentleman, I'm a married lady. In our culture, we shouldn't be in a closed room together, right? Because people will think things, right? So the work that they have done has made it possible that I can do that. So I applaud that. Why a feminist? I've seen. Yes,
What is a feminist first?
So what is a feminist is someone who who doesn't look at the 50% rest of the population of the world and think that we're second-class citizens of the world.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So who also acknowledges the fact that while we are biologically differently built and coded, that does not put one above the other. It's a partnership, whether it be in a family situation, whether it be at work, or so on and so forth. So that's, for me, what a feminist is, who acknowledges. And on the other side, the people who are feminists, they also acknowledge the other genders as well, saying you exist as well. Not one on top of the other, but side by side. Now, having said all of that, for me, being a closet feminist is something that I've grappled with for a long time. I'm not one of those bra-burning feminists. I'm not. I need those implements to help me. But I see where sometimes the equation just puts everything in the favor of the woman, right? Without considering that there are allies in men as well, that they have grown up and that they are understanding of why equality for both the genders and all the genders is important, right? It just completely negates that. So that way I am a closet feminist. I also feel that sometimes in the guise of feminism, we women do a lot of wrong things as well. And that, for me, is unacceptable. So, yeah, that's how, with regards to the waves, I know my history, but I don't know the dates. But they've made it possible for a lot of different things which were not possible, say, for my nani or my dadi, my grandmothers. So
what's the status of feminism these days? What are we trying
it's
to
horrible.
achieve?
It's tokenistic. I know you guys can't see his face. He's like, what is she saying?
So what does it mean? What does it mean by being tokenistic?
So by tokenistic, I mean that if we take the context of Australia, for example's sake, the gender pay gap. There is still a gender pay gap. There are still only very few capable, skilled, experienced women on the boards of companies and places that make these leadership decisions in politics as well. Well, politics has gotten a little bit better, but they're there. And when we look at that, they're making decisions. Men are making decisions for women, right? And that should not happen unless they actually know what it means. We're very lucky that we're in Australia, where we are working towards creating gender parity. And that is very important, because if we look at our counterparts in the America, and the politics that's happening there. It's just ridiculous what's going on there. So therefore, there it is tokenistic. Here, we're working towards it, where we create gender parity and create situations where everyone can thrive together and be successful. So is it tokenistic? You should see what happens on International Women's Day when panelists and boards are full of only white men speaking about our experiences. And I'm like, what? No, that's just wrong. That makes no sense because you don't know what we've been through. You don't know, and you're not seeing it from that angle. So therefore, sometimes I feel it's very tokenistic.
Let me bring women of color into that equation, because once you say they don't have the woman perspective in discussing issues about women, then I'll say, let's break it down.
Yeah.
So why should it be a perspective of woman only? Let's have a perspective of woman and a woman of color.
100%.
And then I'll break it down to women of color who are first generation and second generation and third generation. And then I'll break it down by women of age. And then I'll break it down by women of their marital status, or women with the number of children, because one children can age you by 10 years straight away. And then I can break it down by experience of women, by their educational qualifications, because that gives you a different perspective. So where does it stops?
Where does it stop? It stops when all of these different intersectionalities are taken into consideration when we create events that is going to celebrate, for this example, International Women's Day, and is applicable to a larger range of women, right? Something as simple as having again, this is just this March, International Women's Day at 7 in the morning. How is that inclusive to, in your context, as you said, breaking down, to say any mother who has to drop her kids and get them ready to go to school? 7 in the morning? Really? But that's me. That comes from my perspective where I don't feel included in that region. But having said all of that, all of these intersectionalities in different ways make up men and women and the LGBTQIA plus people as well. All these intersectionalities exist amongst us. Is there work to be done? We can't have an event every single day of 365 days, right? I understand that. But if we can cover some of these things quite a bit more openly, then we are starting to rope in people with those intersections and having them seen and heard as well. They've never been seen, maybe. They've never been heard, right? So you bring them into the fold and you talk to their experience as well. This past International Women's Day, I saw white women. White women have their own lived experiences and their own issues and their own successes that they talk to. But when you grow up in a system that is white predominantly, you're given certain privileges from there, right? But if they speak about a woman of color's experience, they haven't experienced it. So then it becomes, again, bringing back that word, tokenistic, and it's not inclusive.
What does it means by that the white women have been in a setting which has been developed and made by whites and which gives them special privileges over other women?
So everyone's lived experience is different. They could be the same situation, right? Coming back to that closet feminist thing as well, women have faced ostracization for years and centuries and everything else, right? So that part is definitely there. But a larger part of society, especially in predominantly white countries, is built for white people, by white people. I'm not saying they did it because they only wanted to benefit them. That was the time then when they were here, say in the context of Australia, and they did that. Did they negate other people's experiences and include them? That's a different, long story there. But having said that, when we talk about the white women and the white privileges, they grew up in a system which automatically afforded them all the work that, feminists from yesteryears did. You have the right to vote. You have the right to wear this. You have the right to do this. You are of more privilege because you are growing up in that system. So therefore, that's what I mean. Can they be allies? Of course they can. They learn, they educate, they understand. But when they speak about and for, or try to become the voice of, say, me as a woman of color, I will look at them and I'm like, no, you don't know how I feel because you haven't had that lived experience. Are they sympathetic and empathetic to what women of color experience? Yes, there's loads and loads of allies out there. But mostly it's, their privilege of being born in that kind of, I guess, cultural upbringing, that kind of systemic, stuff.
So when you said two things, and I'm trying to grapple of combining these two things. So once you said is that everyone has got their own lived experience. So only they can speak about their experience and what they perceive and their perceptions. The other is that some person is trying to speak on behalf of someone else. Obviously, if you have got your own lived experience and if I have my lived experience and I can only speak about myself and no one else can speak, which means I need a seat on the table. And every woman needs a seat on the table then. Mm-hmm. You know how big the table would need to be?
It'll be gorgeous. It'll be a wonderful table.
And
but I know what you're saying.
Will it be practical? Will it work? Because we have developed a system, a representative democracy. Because everyone can't be on a table, even referendums don't work even in smaller countries with minute populations. That's why we have a representative democracy, that a set of people choose someone, and then those people go and choose someone, and then that final person speaks on behalf of the population.
Right, and that's
what we are seeing. That's what we are seeing, that some woman speaks on behalf of a large section of women who might not have lived all those experiences. So what's wrong?
That's how the system is generated to become, and I understand, I know I was kidding, it would be a beautiful table. When the initial person who speaks for me, say for example me, and is say not from Indian culture or a migrant, has had a migrant journey, if I'm going to elect her, it'll be only based on, or choose her to represent me, would be when she would have actually, or he would have actually spoken to me about my experience. So therefore then you make, again, that education word, right? You educate them on what the issue is. And the hope is that they will take that information and the next person and the next person. So when I say allies, I'm talking about and hope that, the allies who represent us as a collective, women, kind of a thing, or migrant women, kind of, or women of color, so many different intersectionalities. The hope is that they've actually done the groundwork and spoken to people to understand truly where the angst is coming from, what the issues are that we, these different intersections would like solved, and have done their research. Every business does market research before they do anything, right? So if they've done the research, they've done the surveys, they've done the community engagement stuff to understand and therefore then represent, right? When that happens, then they're speaking to the entire collective experience of lived experiences, because they will know all the different things that these intersectionalities may have suffered from, would like to see change, or want in the future. So that's when that works. But if the next Sheila goes up and she hasn't talked to me about, my experience and is speaking about me, when they come, they face hardship. Me, personally, I face no hardship. You know what I'm saying? The way some other migrant women of color would have faced hardship. So, those kind of things. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So.
And this is the problem I face, because I work in my professional life, I work in a space where the risks just keep expanding. The viewpoints just keep expanding. The ways to do keep expanding. I've seen different ways of doing them in India and different ways of doing them in here, and different ways of doing the same thing even across different companies. Mm-hmm. So if I try to bring all that in, it will be $1 million page contract.
Wonderful. Let me know when you're signing it. I'll come and work with you. I understand the direction you're taking. It is also about being able to cull and have the maturity and the foresight to be able to pick up the best practices, right? Instead of just aping. Just because it has worked, as you said, in India, it has worked doesn't mean that it will work here. But there are loads of things in Indian business context, if you want to talk about it, that work very well across the scope. The concept of jugaad in India is so good, and it can work. And it in certain contexts, it can work where, if I look at it with jugaad, I would say, don't be a throwaway society. You can reuse it, so stuff like that. So those kind of things. What works here may not work in Australia at all, in India at all. So you pick and choose the practices that work well with the values you have for the organization, so that at the end of the day, everything is progressing in a growing kind of a thing, right? So that's how I look at that. Yes, we've never had to do that. We've never had to listen to diverse voices or diverse ideas, because it's my way or the highway. My company, it'll happen only this way, and I will not look at anything else, right? Do they grow? They did. But the climate, the ecosystem has changed, where more people speaking up and being able to give their own unique thoughts to, say, a problem can be looked at and be like, oh, okay, that sounds like a doable thing. Let's try that. I love the facial expressions, Nirmal.
You referred to many times about intersectionality. What does that mean, and where does that come from?
So the intersectionalities are just everything that you discussed in a previous point about women of color, migrant women, migrant women of color, a certain age, certain religious, faith, background, number of children. All those are different intersectionalities. And that's true not just of women, but of men as well. You are a father, you're a business owner, you have a professional life as well. You're a favorite of one of the children, and your spouse might be the favorite of another child.
Or let me do a correction. I'm a favorite of both the children.
Ooh, yay, love it. That's what my husband says too. He's like, I'm their favorite. I'm like, okay, right. But there are different intersections there, and all of those intersections are existing within you, Nirmal, right? So that's what intersectionality is. When we put it in the context of a workplace, again, like I said before, the person and the person who's going to, bye, I'm going to work, is the same person. Those intersectionalities exist there as well. And all these different intersections mean different things for that person in different contexts, meaning if it's Ramadan, throughout the rest of the year, he may or she may not be as maybe steadfast in their religion, but around Ramadan, they do like to do their fasting, they like to break their iftar and so on and so forth. So that intersection means something. Them being a dad or papa or appa, oppa, whatever, means something else to them. They're also sons. They're someone's best friend, someone's brother. All of those intersectionalities. So that's what I mean by intersectionalities.
So should I say that because there's the person who is an intersection of multiple identities is on one side of the table in a workplace, and on the other side there's the business,
they coexist,
the manager,
they coexist.
Yeah. But we are negotiating now in a workplace. We are trying to do this, and I'm telling you, you're my manager, you're telling me I've got all these identities and I need to bring all these things into the workplace, and probably potentially I would like you to acknowledge and appreciate all these things. And then you start telling me your intersectionalities from the business point. You need to make money, you need to have all these operational hours, you need to have this, you need to have this, you need me to work with this person even though I don't like them, I don't care. As a business, you say you work together, do this. Who has to give way? Someone, because it's a give and take now. That's how we come to a conclusion. Negotiation is that.
In an ideal world, completely idealistic, is that I would say that the organizational values and these intersections along with the person's values and their intersections, they should match. Not 100%, not everything will match, but they should match, because then it'll be a fantastic relationship, a long-term relationship, etc. In reality, as you've said, that's not what happens. What happens is obviously a conflict. Who gives way? It is a give and take. What is a priority? From a business standpoint, let's be honest, it's a bottom line. It is a bottom line, and the productivity of that employee that you're looking to hire or recruit, and to get the best out of them so that the business grows, the business prospers as well. For this person who's, who's looking to join the company or be part of the company, they can then also look at what is a priority for me. In today's economic situation, paying the bills is important. So then you start putting some of the intersectionalities on a temporary mute, and you say, okay, this is what's prioritizing a priority for me, and that's what I'm going to lean into and do as the manager says. And the manager's like, okay, fine. Once in 3 months, you might want to, do this and everything else. If this happens, then that'll happen, and so on and so forth. So a lot of give and take has to happen in the real world. Is it possible? That's how we end up in positions where we are, right? By doing some sort of negotiation. Again, like I said, in an ideal world, it'd be very different, but world is not ideal. We're working towards it.
That's the thing. This is what someone told me a long time ago, that you don't destroy the good for the ideal.
There you go. That's it.
So, this is a concept from project management, that you speak whatever you want and you try to do whatever you want during the planning phase, when you're planning for the project. Once the plan is there, then you stick to the plan.
Yeah.
And that's how you achieve the plan. Mm-hmm. So in my discussions with other people, they always said, if you are recruiting, if you are setting up a project, you are doing something, you tell all the issues and bring them all together. Yeah. But once you have recruited, once you have joined, once you have come to a conclusion that this is the way it's going to be, then you stick to this. Because once one side moves, businesses, it's not that it's stuck in stone. Yeah. Businesses have to be agile to the changing environment, and people have to change. I might be joining a company as a bachelor, but then I get married and then I have got 10 kids and it's a mess. So things change, but the general tendency is to understand the other side as well, and then work forward. That works in workplace, that works in, and that's why it's not just the rights, it's responsibilities as well, to understand the other's phase. A good example someone gave me was that in a workplace, some people smoke and some people don't, and the people who smoke take these smoke breaks in addition to their lunch breaks, which adds up, and it creates
a break
angst in the other people, that while we are working,
you're getting to do your own thing.
And the business has got this now duty of care to ensure that the work is done, there's no animosity between the different employees, and it hears the views of the other employees in terms of this employee or these employees. So a company gave about 10-15 minutes of additional break to the people who don't smoke.
That's a good way, isn't it?
But it creates a problem.
Okay.
It has to make a database of all the employees who smoke or don't smoke.
And that's personal information, isn't it?
That's privacy. People are giving the information, so there's no privacy of information.
Yeah.
But it's intruding into people's life. And then it has to give that information of people who smoke to the people who don't smoke, so they can keep an eye on each other.
And that creates animosity. Yeah.
And this is what I'm saying, and this is what happens in practical work life, is that once you go into that path, you don't know the unintended consequences. For example, there was another thing of working from home. We thought it's a good place and we can work from home and we can just set up a system at home and start working, but that system becomes your workplace.
Yeah.
and now your employer has a duty of care to see that you're not affected when you're working in that workplace.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now it has, and it got rights to come and check
Check. Yeah.
how you are set up, how's the chair, how's this, and then it also got a right to monitor your system at work, how much you are working.
Yeah.
Are you on the system working, or are you looking after your kid?
Right. Right.
So it's a multivariate problem
It is.
and then which people don't like. People have been just now Commonwealth Bank employees union have gone back to say to the company that no, we don't want you to call us back to workplace.
Wow. Okay. Wow. I don't know. See, I'm spoiled. I've always worked from home, and I work for no one, so no one monitors me, right? But
so what I was trying to get to is that it's a two-way street. If I want something from my employer, from my company, from my country,
yes,
I also need to give something.
110%. And that kind of maturity comes when we are going to actually really be honest in the beginning when it comes to recruitment from the side of the agencies doing the recruiting, organizations as well, and the people. You have to be honest. And if it doesn't match, in this job market, it's a different scenario, but if it doesn't match, two-way street. And you can make it, but people are employable, people have skills, and you learn so many beautiful skills on the job as well, right? So it can work. I love that. I didn't know Commonwealth Bank was doing that. Whoa, that's new. See, I'm learning a lot of things from you, Nirmal, today.
Yes. There was a agreement between NAB employees and NAB, and then now Commonwealth Bank is going through that. The union is working with the Commonwealth Bank to say that Commonwealth Bank issued an edict that all of the people have to be in office for at least 50% of the time, and the employees have their issues.
A lot of the different hybrid workplaces.
That's a test case of how we go forward, because the business has its own needs, and employees have their own needs, and they have already set up.
Yeah.
There is a call that because you're working from home, you don't have to spend all this additional money, which is saving to you, so we can cut down your pay.
That wouldn't be right, but you know what I'm saying.
But I'm saying it depends, because the business pays something.
Yeah, they're paying the internet and the.
Once you ask for something, the business will ask for something.
Yeah,
it's a negotiation.
Yeah, and that's where the maturity comes in, right? To not, for both sides, to not just be on the asking train. I ask because I am your employer and I'm paying you money, so I can ask for any unreasonable things. But also we have a responsibility as employees to be, aware of the fact that the reality is they are paying your bills, right? So be honest and be mature enough to understand there is a give and take. 100% with you on that, Nirmal. 100%.
Gone through a lot of topics. So what's next?
What's next? All right. So what's next is that because I am doing my version of diversity, equity, and inclusion via the podcast, via Dual Nation, via Unmuting You, next year I'm going to make that my brand. So Richa will be the brand, and all of these will be different toolkits that I offer. So that's what's next. What else is next? We are fairly new still to Perth. A year doesn't sound like new, but we're still very new to the ecosystem when it comes to Perth. We've mostly lived in regional areas, so my personal agenda is to be known by people like you guys who I can learn from, I can network with, and not just grow my brand, but I really feel that I have something to give, and hopefully I can be of assistance to other people as well.
Did someone ask you that when you moved from Queensland to Perth, how dare you come here and take away our jobs?
I was asked that in Queensland itself. Oh, that was a Queensland thing. That was a Karatha thing. That is a Perth thing. It is there, and to all the people who have chosen to call Australia home, whether you are working for someone else or for your own self, I will say, please, very politely and respectfully, whoever asks you that question, tell them to have a look at the skills list that the Australian government issues, and it's public information to see why a lot of us come here and we're not taking anyone's jobs.
I was asking in terms of WA and Queensland.
Nah, nothing like that. It was everywhere. I know, but this is a pet peeve of mine because that question has been asked of me, even though I don't work for someone else. I've created my own things. You're taking my job. How am I taking your job? I've created something. So, so my husband has faced the same thing, but a lot of us have. So it wasn't a Queensland thing. It wasn't a WA thing. It's a thing. It's just a thing.
All right. Where can people reach you out?
Find me on LinkedIn. My ID is Richa Joshi. Just find me. You'll see everything. I know Nirmal will put up some tiles and stuff so you can see the face and you'll find me. For Unmuting You, I am currently developing a website. I've been lucky that I've had word of mouth referrals for 2 years, but I think now that it's time to put a website up. So once that is there, I'll let Nirmal know. You can find me on Facebook with Unmuting You. And for the podcast, just head to Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts, and you can find that the name is the same but different podcast. Where else can you find me? Dual Nation can be on Facebook as well. It's Dual Nation at Twice the Price, so you'll find me via that handle. I'm on Instagram. I'm on TikTok. I'm on Threads. So you can find me in a lot of different places.
If you got all these identities, no plan to going into elections?
Oh my God, how many times has that offer been made to me? Again, a Queensland to Perth thing as well. It has been. It's not that elections do not interest me. I do like politics. I don't want to be a politician though, because we get, I feel that when you align to any party, whatever party it may be, obviously you're working just within the box of that party. And me being me, I'm not very good at giving and taking, guys. I'm not. But I think that, it's to answer your question very simply, I like politics. It affects a lot of our everyday world. But nah, man, I can't do politics as a politician. How about you?
No one can get out of politics because everyone votes. And politics touches every aspect of your life from womb to tomb. And there's a good saying somewhere that if you don't participate, that is a participation by
That's
saying that
action,
someone else should make decisions on your behalf.
Yeah.
So it's best to take that decision into your own hands and go it forward in whatever small way you want to do, but do it. Yeah, that's where I am. I am a part of a political process. I am connected into various political things, but this is not my story. This is
I just wanted to ask your perspective because when we started talking about me coming on Perth Dialogues, it was also the whole idea of one thing that I definitely did want to talk about was that it doesn't matter. It does matter, but just because you're a migrant does not mean that you cannot participate in everyday Australian communities and lives beyond the Woolworths and the Coles shopping or playgroups. Participate in it, not to integrate or to assimilate, but to know the culture. So for you yourself as an individual, you get the opportunities to, grow as well, because migration is one of the hardest journeys, and the isolation that happens, oh my goodness. Don't isolate yourself. Move within the community, whatever it is that you're passionate about. Gardening, there are gardening community, gardening places. Oh, you like kids? Oh, there's that. So there's quite a number of opportunities that may or may not have been available in the country of your birth. So participate in this community, so you too can see from the inside what it is like to live in a different country, and participate. There's nothing wrong with it, to participate within the community.
On that note, I can only say that I have been very fortunate in my political participation, even in this short period of 9 years or 10 years. Very fortunate, but I have worked a lot. And my political leanings are open in the public, so it's nothing to be this thing. But yeah, let's stop at that. And if someone wants to know more about it, they can find it very easily. It's very open.
It is open.
Thank you for giving the time, Richa. It's great talking to you. There's a lot of things, and probably you don't need to remain closet feminist. You can come out openly. Australia gives you that opportunity to come out openly and speak and do whatever you feel like. That's the best thing in Australia. And till we meet next time, thank you again.
Thank you very much for giving me free reign to talk about anything and everything, and for all the interesting questions you asked, because I got a lot of new perspective, to think about and to research, and that's how you learn. So thank you very much, Nirmal, for having me.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. Do like, subscribe, and share on whichever platform you have heard this. To know more about Perth Dialogues, please visit perthdialogues.au. From everyone in the studio, goodbye.